Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's session. We are expecting a good number of people to join us today, so we will just wait a couple more minutes for a few more people to join before we make a start. But thank you very much for registering and for turning up prompt.
People don't know it. Alice? How's it on from where you have and they don't have gluten in them? I think she'd have to check the streets on she should.
I think it's on mute anyway.
Just a reminder, maybe to pop yourselves on mute if you can, please.
Yeah.
Okay, we're up to 80, 81, so I'll just give it a couple more moments and then we'll make a start.
Right, I'll turn the volume up.
Do you want the camera on or?
Maybe at the beginning we'll leave it on.
Can I just ask you all to pop yourselves on mute if not done so already, please? Okay, let's make a start. We've hit 90 people, so that's we're expecting a few more, but let's make a start anyway. Welcome and good afternoon to today's session. My name's Andy Oakley. I'm head of the Academy here at the LMA. I'm very pleased to welcome you to our first session on non-financial misconduct. This is the first of a series of 6, if you've signed up for all 6 sessions that we'll be hosting between now and the end of September. Very pleased to welcome you today because this is a market-wide initiative that the LMA, the RUA and the LIBA have been involved in. It's a very important and topical subject that I'm sure we're all very familiar with. And for me, this just demonstrates a real opportunity where we've brought all the associations across the market together to develop this training. And, you know, we've engaged Padda Consulting to deliver the training. This is the first, as I said, of 6 modules. There is additionally a session in June for INEDs and board directors, which you may have heard about as well. But with that, very warm welcome to you all. Sunita will take you through in terms of logistics and she will lead you through today's session. Sunita, over to you.
Thanks, Andy. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Workshop 1, Understanding Non-Financial Misconduct and the FCA Expectations. But just before we get started, have a few important housekeeping points. So for your benefit, the session is being recorded to comply with transparency requirements under data protection legislation. And by participating, you acknowledge the recording. But if you have any concerns, please do let us know. Please can I also reiterate and ask you to keep your microphones on mute during the presentation. However, when we move into the case study breakout sessions, you'll be able to unmute and participate in the discussions. If you have any questions, please pop them into the chat on Teams and we'll try to answer as many as we can at the end of the session. If, however, we do run out of time, we'll create an FAQ document and share it with the trade bodies who will circulate it or make it available on their respective websites. So, what to expect today? We'll start with a presentation, then we're going to move into 4 case study sessions. 2 are designed for large firms and 2 for small firms. When we do reach the case studies, you'll be automatically assigned to the correct group. These case studies are designed to be interactive, and we really do value your participation, so please do open up and discuss. A representative from the trade bodies will be in each breakout room to support and flag any questions. So please either put your hand up or put a question in the chat. Important to note though, in the breakout rooms, they will not be recorded, so feel free to participate openly and share your views. When you move into the case study sessions, I suggest you take a photo of the case study slide itself, so you have the details to refer to during the discussion. I'll remind you again when we do switch to these slides. We'll also have a series of interactive polls. So throughout the session, we'll also have a few opportunities to get your input using Mentimeter polls. So please have your phones nearby so you can scan the QR code when prompted. And we would love to hear from as many of you as possible. And finally, the slides and recording from today's presentation will be shared with the trade bodies and made available to all participants afterwards. And also to note, I'm not expecting any deliveries today, so I won't be disappearing to answer the door. So thank you very much for joining us, and now let's get started. So I want to start with a provocation, something that challenges how we typically think about risk. What if your organisation greatest risk wasn't financial at all? Not capital, not liquidity, not even solvency. Instead, what if it was something less visible, but potentially more corrosive? Behaviour, culture, conduct. This is the shift we're seeing from the regulators, particularly the FCA. They're making it really clear culture isn't just a soft concern, it's not just a nice to have. As that quote on the screen says, culture isn't just a nice to have, it's the invisible architecture that determines whether your organisation stands or falls. And increasingly, it's being treated as a core indicator of regulatory risk. So today, we're going to explore the FCA's evolving focus on non-financial misconduct, why it matters, what they've said in 2024, and how organisations need to respond. Let's now look at what happens when culture fails. The numbers here are real, and more importantly, they're recent. 10 million, that's the amount in regulatory fines tied directly to culture and non-financial misconduct issues. Not product failures, not market abuse, but behaviours inside the firm. 40% turnover. In affected departments, toxic culture led to significant attrition. This isn't just a regulatory concern, it's a talent drain and a reputational risk. And perhaps most worrying, a 72% increase in misconduct reports since 2021. That signals either rising awareness or rising incidents, or both. The FCA has made it absolutely clear. Non-financial misconduct isn't just a nice to solve HR issue anymore. It's a regulatory risk with real financial and operational consequences. So the question we need to ask is not just, are we compliant, but is our culture a strength or is it a liability? This slide really lays out the scale of the issue and why this isn't something any of us can afford to ignore. Let's take a closer look at the data. 26% of reported cases involve bullying and harassment, and that's only what's been formally recorded. And we all know there's other stuff that isn't recorded. 23% involve discrimination, often tied to protected characteristics like race, gender, age, or disability. 41% fall into the other misconduct bucket. Things like substance misuse or inappropriate language. These are all cultural red flags. But what's more concerning is how this risk is managed or not managed. 38% of firms don't share non-financial misconduct information with their board. That is a significant governance blind spot. Half of all cases are discovered only through whistleblowing or grievances, not through proactive culture assessments. And nearly 40% of large firms lack formal governance structures around non-financial misconduct altogether. These numbers don't just describe a problem, they reveal a failure to monitor, manage, and mitigate risks that are hurting people and could be costing firms dearly. These aren't just statistics, they represent real people, real careers, and real regulatory risk. Now that we've established the stakes, let's talk about what we're here to do today. This isn't just a presentation, it's a working session. And by the end of it, we want every one of you to feel equipped to take some sort of action. So here's how we'll break it down. Unmasking the regulatory focus. We'll start with the FCA. We'll start with why the FCA is making culture and non-financial misconduct a core part of its supervision agenda. This is no longer optional, it's embedded in the way they assess firm health. Defining the invisible threat. We'll clearly define what non-financial misconduct actually includes, from harassment to discrimination to toxic leadership, and why it's often missed until too late. Learning through stories. Real-world case studies will help us explore both where firms have gone wrong and where others have made meaningful progress. Stories cut through policy, they help us to see the real impact. Taking the helm, we'll explore governance frameworks that go beyond box ticking and genuinely drive accountability and cultural change. Charting your course, finally, we'll look at actionable steps you can take in your role, whether you're in compliance, whether you're HR, legal, or a leadership role. Your active participation will transform today from information to implementation. So please ask questions, share reflections, and be open to challenge. Let's really try and make this meaningful. As we begin the workshop, it's important to be clear on where we're headed and what you can expect to walk away with. By the time we wrap up, you will be equipped to recognise invisible threats. You'll understand what constitutes non-financial misconduct, including the behaviours that often go undetected but can cause serious harm to your culture and reputation. Be able to spot the warning signs. You'll develop sharper instincts for recognising bullying, harassment and discrimination, both the subtle signals and the overt incidents. Navigate the regulatory landscape. We'll demystify what the FCA expects, how these expectations have evolved in 2024, and what good looks like from a compliance perspective. Lead with integrity. This isn't just about rules, it's about values. You'll learn how to create a culture where ethical conduct is normalised and not just enforced. Implement effective safeguards. Finally, we'll give you practical tools, policies and governance structures that you can use to protect your people and your organisation. Because here's the truth, the most expensive mistakes are the ones you don't see coming. Today, we'll help you see around those corners so you can lead proactively, not reactively. So, as I mentioned, we've got Mentimeter questions. So before launching the question, we're going to ask Mentimeter for a quick interactive poll. So you'll see a question pop up and it's asking, what's the biggest challenge in addressing non-financial misconduct in your organisation? We'll give you a minute or so to submit your answer. So please just share the first thing that comes to your minds. And remember to keep your phones handy to scan that QR code if you haven't already joined Mentimeter. Thanks everyone. Please keep sending in those answers. Give you about another 30 seconds or so. Getting some good responses, so thank you all. Another few seconds, see if there's any late entries. Okay, so Thank you all for your responses. Look at it, some really important themes coming out already. The inadequate training and awareness, lack of senior accountability, leadership accountability. These are challenges we are seeing across the industry and are exactly the kinds of barriers the FCA expects firms to proactively tackle. As we move through today's sessions, keep these challenges in your mind, particularly when we get to the case studies where we'll be discussing practical ways to address them. So thank you all for participating. So understanding the regulatory shift. This is where we shift from internal awareness to external expectations. The FCA stance in 2024 has become clearer and more assertive. Culture is no longer viewed as a soft issue. It's now a foundational risk factor, as critical as capital adequacy or operational resilience. Why? Because time and time again, the regulator has seen that when misconduct surfaces, whether it's discrimination, harassment, or toxic leadership, there's a pattern, and it's rarely a one-off. It's cultural. The FCA findings from recent supervisory reviews and whistleblower data have revealed that non-financial misconduct often signals broader governance failures. Poor culture correlates with poor customer outcomes and ethical blind spots, and many firms are failing to report or escalate cultural issues to the board, let alone to the regulators. So before we define what non-financial misconduct actually means, let's be clear on this. This focus didn't emerge from nowhere. It's a direct response to harm, both to individuals and to our market integrity. This is the FCA reframing misconduct as a leadership and risk issue, not just a personal failing. Let's talk about one of the most significant regulatory developments in this space. The FCA's non-financial misconduct survey. This wasn't just a routine data collection exercise. It was a watershed moment, a signal that culture is no longer optional. The FCA made it clear what was once dismissed as just HR issues is now firmly in the realm of conduct risk. Why? Because repeated incidents of bullying, harassment, and discrimination were eroding trust, not just inside firms, but in the financial system as a whole. As one FCA executive put it, when we allow toxic behaviours to flourish in the workplace, we're planting the seeds for financial misconduct to follow. That's the link the regulator is making, and it's why this matters so much. So what did the survey find? The scale of this survey was unprecedented. Over 1,000 firms participated. That included banks, brokers, insurers, intermediaries. It covered more than 325,000 employees. In the London market, 75% of respondents were small firms, meaning this isn't just a big firm issue. And the key revelation, trade associations are emerging as a critical catalyst for change. They're setting the tone, supporting smaller firms, and pushing for industry-wide standards that embed fairness, integrity, and accountability. So what we're seeing is regulatory focus plus some industry momentum. The challenge and the opportunity is to respond with clarity, consistency, and culture-led leadership. This slide captures some of the most powerful and frankly uncomfortable truths that came out of the FCA survey. Now let's walk through them. So rising complaints may signal health, not sickness. Firms with engaged employees see more reporting. At first glance, an increase in misconduct reports might seem like a bad sign. But what the data actually shows is that more reports often mean better engagement and stronger trust in the system. People are speaking up because they believe that something will be done. Detection systems matter more than policies. How will you find problems if you're not actively looking? It's not enough to have policies written down if there's no mechanism to surface misconduct through monitoring, safe reporting channels, or culture checks. You won't find the issues until they explode. Proactive detection is now a regulatory expectation. Board can't delegate culture. Leadership accountability is non-negotiable. Culture does start at the top, and so does responsibility. The FCA is no longer accepting the idea that culture is owned by HR or even compliance. It's a board-level risk and must be treated as such. And I want to leave you with this question. Would your employees feel safe reporting misconduct tomorrow? Because of that question, more than any metric, is the real test of your cultural health. This timeline here illustrates just how long the FCA has been building towards this momentum. What we're seeing now in 2025 is not just a sudden pivot, it's the result of years of increasing focus on culture and conduct. Now let's step through the key milestones. September 2018, Megan Butler writes to firms confirming that sexual misconduct falls within the regulatory framework. This is not the first time behaviour, not just financial failings, is formally linked to supervisory oversight. Forward on to January 2020, a CEO letter urges insurance leaders to prioritise cultural issues linked to non-financial misconduct. So this is where the tone from the top starts to shift. Then move forward to September 2023. Two major developments. There was a portfolio letter stresses the need for a more inclusive future in wholesale insurance, a joint FCA PRA consultation proposing embedding non-financial misconduct into core regulatory requirements. And then a date I'm sure you all remember, February 24, when the FCA formally launched the data collection exercise focused specifically on non-financial misconduct incidents across the industry. And then in May 24, the FCA responded to the Treasury Select Committee's Sexism in the City inquiry, signalling its commitment to addressing systemic behavioural risks. And then October 24, the FCA published the results of the non-financial misconduct survey, catalysing a new wave of accountability and expectations for all regulated firms, not just the insurance sector. There's also an important legal backdrop to this regulatory drive. While the Equality Act 2010 originally set out protections against sexual harassment, there have been ongoing updates to guidance rather than major changes to the legislation itself. However, newer developments are very significant. The Worker Protection Amendment of Equality Act 2010, the Act 2023, passed in October 23 and came into force in October 24, introduces a new proactive duty on employers. Employers are now required to take reasonable steps to prevent sexual harassment in the workplace. This is a significant tightening of obligations beyond simply responding to incidents. And here's the headline. This is not a passing regulatory interest. This is an accelerating focus. The message to the industry is clear. Culture is supervision, behaviour is risk, and now action is now expected. This slide is really a diagnostic tool. It's designed to help us pause and reflect, because behind every misconduct scandal, there were warning signs. These were either missed, ignored, or minimised. So let's have a look at these. Misconduct is rising. We're seeing increased incident volumes across the industry, not because people have suddenly become worse, but because environments are finally enabling them to speak up. More reports can mean a stronger culture or a delayed reckoning. Composition of issues. This isn't just one type of misconduct, it's a mix. Discrimination, bullying, retaliation, microaggressions, and it requires a nuanced, multi-layered response, not a one-size-fits-all. Discovery gaps. The majority of serious issues are still discovered reactively, not through robust internal controls, If you're relying on complaints and whistleblowing channels, you're only seeing the tip of the iceberg. And then governance failures. Many boards and exec committees still don't receive regular reporting on culture and non-financial misconduct. If leadership isn't seeing it, it's not being managed. Inconsistent responses. Even when issues are raised, how they're handled varies by seniority, by geography, by business line. That inconsistency really does erode trust and fuels perceptions of favouritism or impunity. And so we land on the critical question: what's hiding in your culture that you haven't yet detected? Because what you don't see, you can't fix. And what you don't fix will eventually surface in headlines, fines, or attrition. Let's take a step back and ask, why do issues of non-financial misconduct still catch organisations off guard? The FCA survey revealed 6 critical gaps that make firms vulnerable, regardless of their size, sector, or stated values. These aren't just theoretical, they're lived realities in firms that found out too late what was hiding in their culture. Let's walk through them. So, power imbalances. When influence is concentrated in the hands of a few, it creates a breeding ground for misconduct and often discourages reporting. Seniority should never mean immunity. Lack of psychological safety. If people don't feel safe speaking up, they won't, will they? Silence isn't comfort, it's fear. And that fear allows issues to fester. Poor line management. Line managers are the front line of culture. When they're poorly equipped or untrained, they can escalate risk instead of resolve it. Over-reliance on process. Having the right policies doesn't guarantee the right outcomes. Culture and accountability have to bring policies to life. Otherwise, it's just a bit of paper. Inertia and denial. One of the most dangerous beliefs is, this isn't a problem here. It's not misconduct itself that presents the greatest risk. It's believing your organisation is immune. Inconsistent responses. Even when issues are identified, the way they're handled can vary. That inconsistency undermines trust, credibility, and any sense of fairness within the firm. So ask yourselves, where do these gaps exist in your organisation? Because once you see them, you can close them. And remember, the greatest risk isn't misconduct itself. It's believing your organisation is immune. So we've talked about non-financial misconduct as a risk. So if we're going to manage this risk properly, we need to define it clearly. And as the slide says, if you can't name it, well, you can't tame it. So let's start by naming it. Non-financial misconduct. Well, that includes behaviour that may not directly relate to financial transactions or regulatory breaches, but poses serious cultural, reputational, and regulatory risks. These behaviours often erode trust, as I've already said. It also destabilises teams, and if ignored, can lead to significant regulatory consequences. These examples include harassment and bullying, discrimination, abuse of power, retaliation, and toxic leadership undermining exclusion or manipulation disguised as performance, pressure, or style. It also covers behaviours outside the workplace, especially when they raise questions about someone's fitness and propriety. The FCA has been clear. A pattern of bullying or abuse, even if not criminal, can call on individual suitability into question. So defining non-financial misconduct isn't about creating a new category of concern. It's about recognising how conduct and culture are inseparable and how behaviour, no matter where it happens, shapes trust and risk inside your firm. So now that we've defined what non-financial misconduct is, let's take a closer look at the broad categories the FCA has flagged. as early warning signs of a cultural risk. So bullying. So this includes intimidating, belittling, or aggressive behaviours that create fear or humiliation. Sometimes it's masked as, oh, that's strong leadership, but the impact is corrosive. Harassment, unwanted conduct that really violates someone's dignity or creates a hostile environment. This includes sexual harassment, racial harassment, and harassment related to any protected characteristic. And discrimination. This can be systematic, or repeated unfair treatment based on your race, gender, disability, age, or again, any other protected characteristic. Discrimination can be direct or indirect, but both are harmful and both attract regulatory scrutiny. And then there's other misconduct. This is a broader category that can include things like retaliation against whistleblowers, exclusionary behaviours, substance misuse, impacting work, persistent microaggressions, and even inappropriate behaviour outside of work that damages your professional reputation. The important thing to remember is this: non-financial misconduct isn't just a HR issue, it's a regulatory, financial, and reputational risk. Ignoring these behaviours allows trust and credibility to erode, and today's regulators are expecting firms to be proactive and not reactive. So now that we've looked at broad categories, let's dig a little deeper into what these behaviours actually look like day to day. The patterns that can quietly erode a culture if we don't spot and address them early. So this takes us deeper into lived reality of non-financial misconduct, because behind every policy or case file is a pattern of recognisable behaviour. And it's those patterns we need to spot early and act decisively. Here are 5 key behaviours that the FCA considers significant conduct risk. Talked about bullying, but how does it manifest itself? Verbal abuse, excessive criticism, exclusion or social isolation, undermining colleagues in front of others. Does anyone recognise these behaviours? Harassment, unwanted conduct that violates dignity. And how does that appear? It appears through persistent unwelcome comments, derogatory jokes or remarks, threats or intimidation, inappropriate physical or digital contact, so social media included. Sexual harassment, any unwanted advances or conduct of a sexual nature that affects someone's employment or well-being. Again, this takes the form of inappropriate jokes, unsolicited touching, sexual propositions or quid pro quo offers. You might think I'm making it up, but these are real things that are happening in our market. Discrimination, unfair treatment based on protected characteristics, shows up as unequal pay, biased recruitment or promotion processes, exclusion from decision-making or development opportunities. Victimization, retaliation against those who report or challenge misconduct. What does that result in? Denied promotions, unjust disciplinary action, social or professional isolation after they've spoken up. So these behaviours aren't just inappropriate, they're indicators of cultural rot. They corrode morale, damage trust, and in the eyes of the regulator, they undermine the fitness and propriety of your firm. So what's our job? Our job is to move beyond recognition to prevention, intervention, and accountability. So far, we've looked at the most commonly recognised forms of non-financial misconduct, but it's critical that we do expand on that lens, because there are others too, often less visible but equally harmful behaviours that the FCA is now also tracking very closely. So these include patterns of targeted control, humiliation, coercion that can severely damage workplace culture and employee well-being. Let's break them down. So mobbing or group bullying, collective targeting with persistent hostility. This creates environments where individuals feel isolated, excluded, and systematically undermined by a group, often under the radar of formal management. Hazing, harmful initiation activities imposed on new joiners. It manifests through humiliation, forced tasks, or emotional distress. Masters, oh, that's just team bonding, but it often borders on psychological or physical abuse. Power harassment, the abuse of authority to control, belittle, or pressure others. This appears as unrealistic deadlines, public dressing downs, workloads designed to punish or degrade. And then let's not forget about cyberbullying, the use of digital tools to intimidate or harm. This takes the form in threatening emails or messages, offensive social media posts, online gossip, in Teams chats or forums. Everything is discoverable. And we've got psychological harassment, a more insidious form of control through emotional manipulation. It shows through gaslighting, coercion, constant belittling and silent treatment. It's deeply damaging and often hard to detect. These are not isolated issues, they are culture indicators. And left unaddressed, they will escalate into risk events. So again, I pose the question to you. Would your employees recognise these behaviours in your workplace? And if so, would they feel safe calling them out? We've talked about what non-financial misconduct looks like and how it shows up. And let's talk about why it matters, not just in theory, but in terms of real-world impact. So why does it matter for your people? Because it creates toxic work environments where talent withers. When non-financial misconduct is left unchallenged, people's psychological safety vanishes. You don't just lose productivity, you lose trust, motivation, and collaboration. It drives valuable employees away and repels diverse talent. People don't just leave roles, they leave a culture behind. And diverse talent will not stay where inclusion is performative and accountability is missing. Damaging trust at every level of the organisation. Trust is a cultural currency. Once it's lost, especially when misconduct is ignored or mishandled, it's extremely difficult to regain. So we've looked at what it means for your people, but what does it mean for the regulator? This signals deeper governance failures that demand additional scrutiny. The FCA, as I've said, now treats non-financial misconduct as a leading indicator of systemic risk. If there's smoke, trust me, they'll come looking for the fire in your leadership and governance. Demonstrates cultural issues that predict conduct risks. Firms with a toxic culture are more likely to produce poor customer outcomes and fail regulatory expectations. So there you see it. Non-financial misconduct is now a supervisory red flag. For your regulators, it may trigger financial penalties and enhanced supervision. It's not just about internal HR or compliance anymore. Firms seen to be failing in this space may face enforcement, Section 166 reviews, or constraints on senior manager approvals. And it all comes down to this. The cost of ignoring non-financial misconduct isn't just measured in fines. It's measured in lost innovation, diminished engagement, and eroded reputation. This is not just a compliance issue, it's a leadership imperative. So before launching the question, let's move on to our next quick Mentimeter poll. So the scenario is a colleague is concerned about senior manager's inappropriate behaviour, but fears retaliation if they report it. So you've got a few options to choose from. So just select what you think is the best course of action. Again, I'll give you about a minute to respond. Looking at about 50-50. Thanks, everyone. Keep those responses coming in. Let's give it a few more seconds. Still verging on kind of 50-50. Thank you all. I mean, look, this really highlights the real world dilemmas people face when dealing with non-financial misconduct. I can see that many of you recognise the importance of using the formal channels, like whistleblowing routes or speaking to HR or compliance directly. That's critical, especially when senior individuals are involved, because there's an even greater need for a proper investigation and protection for the person raising the concern. So we'll be coming back to this theme later when we talk about accountability and leadership responsibility. Thanks again all for your participation in this. And now it's your turn to take the lead. So as I said at the beginning, you'll be split into two groups, small firms and large firms, based on your organisation's size. Although I must say that some people joined quite late and we didn't have those details to hand, so we took a wild guess. So before we move you into the breakout rooms, just a few quick reminders. Make sure you come off mute once you're in your breakout room. This is your chance to really participate and get involved in the discussion. We strongly encourage everyone to contribute. The more you share, the better and more useful that session will be for everyone. And we'll give you a 5-minute warning because we'll be in that room for 20 minutes. So grab yourself a drink. So we'll give you a 5-minute warning before the session ends so we can start wrapping up any discussions in good time. If you're assigned to the large firms case study, you'll be coming with me. And if you're assigned to the small firms case study, you'll be joining my colleague Colette, otherwise known as Collie. And don't forget, please take a picture of the case study slide when it comes up. This part of the session will not be recorded, so having the case study to hand will really help you during the discussions, especially if your memory is anything like mine. You'll be glad you snapped that photo.
Oh, are we?
What happened there?
I don't know. Are we still all on?
Suddenly a glitch.
You should be back in the main room now.
Yeah.
Oh, we've not started. We've not even done our second one.
Sorry, that went quicker than I thought it would go, actually. Can you
Are
hear
we
me?
all back in the room now?
Yes, can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you,
Apologies to
Sunita.
small firms because we only got one case study done. We were discussing the bad one, but for anybody in small firms, when you receive the slides, there is a goodie firm as well that was had great processes and measures implemented. So please have a look at those, and we will try and find a way of getting some information back to you as well, maybe through the FAQs on that. Apologies, all small firms.
Oh, we managed to get through both of ours, but again, you know, there could be more debate around that. So it's something that we'll take back with us, whether we just stick to one case study and talk thoroughly. I think we were being a bit ambitious. Anyway, have we got everyone back in the room? We haven't lost anyone in the ether somewhere, because I think there were more people that started on the call, or unless they dropped off halfway through. So just to remind you all that we are now recording again. Oh, I was kicked out and rejoined, so someone got kicked out. All right, we've looked at what went wrong and what went right. Well, in some of us, we looked at the good and the bad, and in others, we just looked at the bad one. So now let's bring it together with a forward-looking question. What separates success from failure when it comes to culture and non-financial misconduct? So failure, that often isn't about a lack of policies or good intentions. It's about a lack of follow-through. So in one of the case studies, we saw what happens when leadership is disengaged, when employees feel unsafe speaking up, and when policies only exist on paper. On the other hand, success on the other hand is active, it's intentional. Other firms show that measurable culture backed by strong governance, training, transparency creates real sustainable change. So what really separates success from failure comes down to a few things. Visibility. Culture has to be seen, talked about, and owned at every single level. And that was something that came out of our workshop. It's not just for one board. It shouldn't be a silo. It should be, this is everybody. Accountability. Actions must match the words, especially from leadership. So there's no point just ticking the boxes and saying, yep, noted, or we've done the right thing, or we've got this board report, and that's great. Look at us, aren't we so wonderful? It's about following that through. Empowerment. Employees do really need to feel confident that their voice matters. Like I said, don't have the answer to this. I'm not sure that the whistleblowing lines or reporting it internally is the right approach. Sorry, why am I echoing? Is that better? Fine. I'm not sure that's the right approach because it's not really being used in people that you speak to, or whether it's how it's been implemented in firms. And like I said, it's about the data that you have. You don't have to disclose the actual content of any investigations, but if people can see the number of reports coming in and how many have been investigated and actions have been taken, then that data will help you track and manage culture. And then culture isn't just a campaign, it really is a commitment. So culture doesn't shift overnight, but every step towards openness, fairness and integrity is a step forward, and might be a long path, but every step forward is a path to success. So before we talk about best practices, let's take a moment to just recognise some of the warning signs. What poor practice looks like in both small and large firms when it comes to managing workplace culture. So for smaller firms, it's often more challenging. So the risks come from a lack of structure. They might not have formal HR policies, or those policies are vague, or they're not really used. Leadership may see culture as something as a nice to have, secondary to daily operations. And without guidance, employees are left to resolve serious issues on their own. There's often no clear way to report misconduct, which means even when people want to do the right thing, they really don't know how. I think we've got some links to some resources, useful resources for smaller firms. I know that we circulated that a few months back when we did a LIBA presentation. I'm sure we can circulate that again. We've got some other useful resources at the end of this presentation too. On the other side, large firms struggle for different reasons. They may have plenty of policies, but only on paper. It's a huge gap between what's written and what's actually enforced. So accountability can stop short of the top. If senior leaders aren't held responsible, culture issues go unaddressed. And in larger firms, bureaucracy also plays a role. Warning signs get buried in layers of process. And just like in small firms, fear can keep employees silent. So what's the common thread across all these red flags? In both cases, culture is treated as a compliance exercise and not really a strategic priority. And when that happens, organisations really do miss the opportunity to create workplaces that are not only safer, but stronger. So we've looked at the warning signs of poor practice, but we're not talking all doom and gloom across our industry. So let's flip it around and explore what good looks like. Whether a company is large or small, success in culture management doesn't depend on size. It really depends on the commitment. So for smaller firms, the winning formula often comes down to being intentional with the basics. Proactive leadership is huge. Leaders who model the values they want to see set the tone for everyone. They also benefit from keeping things simple, clear policies, plain language, and procedures that everyone can understand. Reporting mechanisms need to be accessible, scaled to the size of the business, but still be safe and reliable. And the big one, swift, fair actions. So when something does happen, small firms thrive when they deal with them quickly and consistency, regardless of who's involved. And the reason for that is because they're small firms and everyone just talks and everyone knows each other. Large firms, on the other hand, succeed when they make culture part of their core strategy, not just an HR issue. They use data analytics to proactively spot problems, hotspots where patterns of behaviour might signal something a bit deeper. Accountability can't stop with middle management. Board level visibility into cultural metrics is also a game changer. That ensures real ownership at the top. And also they create multiple trusted reporting channels, because in big systems, one path isn't enough. You need options that people believe in. So what separates success from failure isn't resources, it's about priority and perspective. The most effective firms treat culture as essential to performance and not just an afterthought. So before launching this question, let's move into our next quick Mentimeter question. So this time we're asking you, in one word, what's missing from most workplace policies on non-financial misconduct? If you can think of more than one thing, you can enter up to 3 words. But even if you can only think of one, that's absolutely fine. You'll have about a minute to put your ideas down. Could be policies, it could be procedures, it could be transparency. Not that I'm trying to kind of guide you all, but I'm just trying to flip a few ideas out there. Leadership, tone from the top. Keep the answers coming in. Look, you can see some interesting themes start emerging already. Yeah, we've got transparency, leadership, accountability, trust. Keep them coming in. Give it a few more seconds. So we're seeing words like leadership, accountability, trust, clarity, processes. That's exactly the point. It's often organisations that don't have policy, is that those policies can feel incomplete, but without strong leadership backing, clear accountability, and a culture where people feel truly safe to use those reporting channels. As I've said before, having a policy on paper is one thing, but if it's not trusted, embedded, and consistently enforced, and somebody isn't held to account, it doesn't really protect anyone. So we'll keep building on these ideas as we move through the next sections. Thank you all. Thank you all again for participating. I'm going to canter through the last few slides. So we talked a lot about values, culture and strategy, but now it's time to get practical. This slide is about making things real, turning good intentions into real world impact. Many organisations intend to create safe, ethical cultures. They put it into their mission statements, mention it in their town halls, but without governance, accountability and action, it remains just that, an intention. So governance means having the right structures in place, who's responsible for culture, how often is it reviewed, what gets reported to the board. It's about formalising the ownership of workplace behaviour, because if no one owns it, no one fixes it. Accountability ensures that people at all levels, not just frontline employees, are held to the same standards. When accountability stops at middle management, trust breaks down. And accountability isn't just about consequences. It's all about, as we've already heard and on that word board, it's all about transparency, fairness, follow-up. And finally, action. Culture is built in the doing, in how misconduct is addressed. in how training is rolled out, in how feedback is received and acted on. Without visible, consistent action, even the best governance models will lose credibility. So think of these three elements: governance, accountability, and action as the operating system of your culture. When they're working together, they really do turn values into habits and habits into results. Your turn again. Now for our next Mentimeter, we're asking, what is one concrete action your organisation could take in the next 3 months to strengthen its approach to non-financial misconduct? Think practical, doable steps, not just big ideas. I don't know, if you're stuck for inspiration, things like training at all levels, including involving the board, updating policies, making sure they're actually fit for purpose and not just gathering dust on the shelf, launching or refreshing your culture survey. People know that it's anonymous. People really listen to their employees. But genuinely feel free to put whatever you want, well, within reason. I'll give it a few more seconds. I'm just watching the clock over here. I think we'll be all right for time, actually. Really good ideas coming through. Oh, thank you all so much. What's great here is seeing how many practical, achievable ideas have just been suggested. So it's not just about having the policies. I can see training coming up a fair bit on here and communication. So these kind of things can send a really powerful message that non-financial misconduct isn't just an HR issue. It's a core part of how your firm works and how it protects your people, how it builds trust. And we'll also talk about how firms can keep momentum going after the first action is taken. Because again, this isn't a one-off exercise. It's not a journey. There's no destination. Just keep it going. So we've discussed the risks, we've explored the strategies, but what are the practical steps that you should be taking to turn these good intentions into actual cultural change? This slide lays out 4 essential best practice tips. Develop clear definitions and policies. Starts with clarity. If people don't know what counts as misconduct or what's expected of them, everything else falls apart. This means defining terms like non-financial misconduct, outlining examples, and making policies that are easy to understand and not just something that's going to be marked by the FCA. Establish effective reporting mechanisms. Having a policy is one thing. Giving people a safe, trusted way to report issues is another. This might look different for different firms, but anonymous platforms, third-party hotlines, or dedicated internal contacts, which we've all discussed. But the key is accessibility and follow-up. If no one trusts the channel, trust me. Yeah, trust me. I always trust someone who says trust me. They won't use it. Conduct regular, meaningful training. Training is where, sorry, these notes keep popping up. Training is where knowledge becomes habit, but it can't just be a checkbox exercise once a year. Make it real. Use case studies, encourage some dialogue, tailor your sessions to different roles at different levels. So the material that you use for your training should feel relevant, not recycled material. Set leadership tone from the top. This is the game changer. If leadership doesn't live the values they promote, none of the other steps will stick. Culture does cascade. People watch what leaders do more than what they say. So when leaders walk the talk, especially when it's hard, it builds credibility and sets the tone for everyone. So remember, policies without practice are merely suggestions. The real difference is in how we embed these practices into our everyday decisions, behaviours, and habits.
Sunita, there's a quick question posed in the chat if you want to cover it off now, or do you want to cover it towards the end?
If you want to read it out, we've got 10 minutes. So.
Sure, it's from Chris. So do you think the PRA FCA have missed an opportunity to encourage more resistant firms to enact real change by not proceeding with their D&I consultation proposals?
Oh, don't even get me started on that. My answer is absolutely. absolutely they have. I think that's more a political drive, and that's a different conversation. But I genuinely think, yes, it's not just on non-financial misconduct, but diversity and inclusion as a whole. I think it's an easy way for people to start thinking it's not as important and start not opting out, but they've taken their foot off the pedal on that one, I think. I do.
Okay. And just another one linked to this one, Sunita, in terms of being proactive, what else can be done apart from informing staff via training and communicating policies?
I think it's keeping that message going. I don't know if people can recall a few years back when, I think it was during COVID or just before COVID or just after COVID, the FCA sent round these posters and they said, like, you know, people should make those posters visible about speaking up and whistleblowing. And yeah, it was around COVID time. Can't remember if it was before or after, but make those available near your coffee points, because especially like when new people join. So let's take, you're not a very diverse organisation, but you've got a diverse individual who's just joined, and then when that individual has joined, but they want to use a whistleblowing policy, they've done the training, you know, the online training that you end up being inundated with when you first go through your induction. They've gone click, 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 but they've failed to kind of really acknowledge what they need to do. But if it's actually more visible, people can put it on their, you know, the screen that when you log on in the morning, it can pop up on there. It can be something that's very clear on your internal intranet site. It can be something, posters that you put up on your coffee areas. It can be something that you raise in your town halls. I mean, if you're interested in following up afterwards with us, I'm more than happy to give you lots of ideas on that in that space. Any more questions, Andy?
There is, I think it's just quick. Yes, it will. So Amy has asked, will any of the sessions cover when the FCA should be notified of non-financial misconduct, and debate around requirements interact with legal requirements? Will that be considered in any sessions as well?
It will, but I can't off the top of my head remember which ones. But
yeah, it will be. I was going to say yes is the short answer, Amy.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you can't binge watch these sessions because they're being pulled together. So you'll have to just wait for the next episode. But we'll keep you informed. I think if you go into the brochure that's been created, there was an e-brochure that was created. If you go into that, it actually covers what's going to be covered in each of the sessions. Any more questions, or shall I just
No,
whiz
I think
through?
let's move on, Sunita.
Yeah. So now that we've explored the foundations, the failures and the best practices, let's talk about what comes next. What can you do immediately to strengthen your organisation's approach to culture and non-financial misconduct? So 4 immediate actions to strengthen your approach, some quick wins really. Audit your current reporting mechanisms. Are they accessible, trusted? Are they actively used? If not, this is the first place to invest your attention. Review your policies and definitions. Make sure they're up to date, easy to understand, relevant to your workforce, because the confusion is where you get your gaps and clarity then closes that. Training. I know a lot of you mentioned training, so have a look at your training program. Look at your regular training sessions. Is it role specific? Is it reflective of real issues? Are you bringing it to life with case studies? Does it just feel quite generic and it's probably not sticking? And then what are leaders modelling, especially in how they respond to misconduct or raise concerns? So leadership tone sets the tone for the whole of the organisation. So that's a really important one. So to build a truly resilient and accountable culture, follow a structured approach. Simple roadmap. Assess, understand your current state, gather feedback, audit data, and review some cases. Act, fix what's broken, reinforce what's working well, and communicate changes regularly and clearly. Embed, make it stick. Integrate culture metrics into performance reviews, board reports, and leadership development. You don't need to overhaul everything overnight, But if you leave here today, just make one small change, you're already creating that change. So I'm going to leave it with you. What's your next move? Don't worry, you don't have to share it with me. So another Mentimeter, this is the last one. So your final Mentimeter question for today, we're asking you to rate your confidence that your senior leadership takes effective action in managing and enforcing non-financial misconduct policies. We won't be able to identify you, so please be honest. So your options are extremely confident, very confident, neutral, not so confident, or not at all confident. Just a little nudge if you can avoid picking neutral, because actually doesn't really tell us much. I know it's there, but you know, if you're leaning even slightly one way or the other, it's better to show that. We give you, yeah, we're kind of on target. So I'll give you another 30 seconds. Come on, we know there's more people in the room. Should be 80 responses. That doesn't add up to 80, and I'm not a mathematician. A few more clicks, everyone. Either that or someone's reading their emails and doing something else, multitasking. Oh, somebody couldn't log into Menti. Oh, we'll have a look at that and see why that's happened. Thank you, Karen. Now everyone knows Karen couldn't log into Menti.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. We'll have a look into that. There's a couple of people that couldn't log into Menti and got a blank screen. We'll check in. We'll have a look at that. So, lots of confidence. That's a great signal that leadership is setting the right tone. So that's good to see. So where people aren't so confident, that's an important reminder. You know, that's where having policies and statements is only part of the story. So what really matters is that confidence in leadership. Culture, as we said, culture starts at the top and enforcement needs to be lived, not just written down. That's interesting. So thank you all for participating in that. We've covered a lot today. Challenges of managing culture, practical tools, governance structures, and the actions you can take. Now let's see what questions you have. And I think we've answered quite a few. And given the time, not quite a few, sorry, that's an over-exaggeration on my end, but we've answered a few questions. What we'll do is we will, if there are any questions that you've still got, please leave it in the chat and we will circulate an FAQ. I'm very conscious of time. I work in compliance, you know, so I'm a stickler for the rules. So here's some useful resources, because one of the biggest missteps is that you have to tackle all of this on your own. So wealth of support out there. And again, we'll try and circulate the document that we published, and there's also another checklist. We'll have a look at those and see if we can get the trade bodies to circulate those, because it takes you into, directly links you into the support or the resources. So you're not starting from scratch. You can start leveraging what's already working out there. Just a reminder, if you're looking to move on to episode 2, that there are another 5 workshops. These are the dates. Some of you have registered, some of you may want to register, but there's space throughout the coming months, so you can really build you know, capacity at a realistic pace. Each one builds on the last one, so in the end, you know, hopefully creating a complete roadmap. So you can register using the link on the slide, and I'd really encourage you and your teams to take advantage of these. And then as we wrap up, want to make sure you know where to go to if you've got any questions. These are the key contacts for ongoing guidance. So you're not alone, so reach out if you need to. If you've got any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. And finally, before we close, we'd really like some feedback, because we'd like to make sure that we take your feedback on board and improve the future workshops. And I've finished dead on time. I'd like to thank you for your participation, and I'm going to hand over to Andy now.
Thank you, Sunita. Listen, I'm very conscious it is 3:30 and others have probably got other commitments. If we could just move on to the feedback slide. As Sunita said, really grateful if you can just take a couple of moments just to give us your thoughts. Please be honest, we've got 5 more sessions to go. So what worked, what didn't work, what would you like to see more of, less of? But listen, thank you very much. The 22nd of May is the next session. The details for each of the following or the next sessions will follow shortly. Thank you, Sunita, as well. Very, very engaging as always. But thanks all as well for contributions, questions, and we will see you in a little over a month's time. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.